everyone. I'm Tamron Hall. The News Nation is following an investigation into allegations of excessive force by police in Oakland, California. The police chief says he's treating this incident you see there on tape Tuesday night involving an Iraq War veteran the same way they would investigate a police-involved shooting. Marine Lance Corporal Scott Olson has been upgraded from critical to fair condition today. His family is said to be headed from Wisconsin to California to be at his side. His uncle is quoted as saying he's appalled by police action. The Iraq War vet was hit in the head by what's believed to be a police tear gas can while officers were trying to kick Occupy Wall Street protesters out of the camp they've occupied for 2 weeks. While Olson lay motionless on the ground, a group of demonstrators rushed to his aid, but police again were caught on tape throwing something into the group that explodes, scattering the protesters. Oakland's police chief says an internal review is underway.
Each officer in our department showed a lot of restraint throughout the day, even when faced with a lot of adversity, people cursing at them, spitting at them. And early in the day, they were met with people throwing urine and feces at them. We're not going to stand and get pelted with rocks and bottles and not being able to defend ourselves.
Joining me now, criminal defense attorney John Burris. He is in talks to represent some of the protesters arrested that night, and he's won a class action suit against the Oakland Police Department back in 2003. John, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so what is supposed to be police procedure if what the chief is saying is true and accurate? If there were bottles thrown and some of these other things happened, is that an appropriate show of force, the tear gas canisters and some of the other things that are clearly caught on tape?
Well, it depends. We had, back during the Iraqi War, we worked out a crowd control policy with the city of Oakland, the Oakland Police Department, and that policy required that certain force can be used depending upon what type of activity is before you. It is not appropriate to willy-nilly to use flash grenades and rubber bullets and gas grenades just on the whim. You have to have a particular confrontation in front of you. In this particular case, it appeared that a lot of the police activity occurred in a random way. It was lobbed in the crowds. You can very easily hurt people that way. And so I think there's a legitimate basis to argue that the force used was excessive. On the other hand, police have a right to not only defend themselves, but also to defend the general public as well. So an internal investigation obviously has to occur. I've been involved in many of those kind of things. And this is a situation where you're trying to balance out the rights of the protesters, what I think is a legitimate issue, and the rights of the public in terms of public safety and the protection of property. I think that there was a little too aggressive in some areas, and I think the public responded. I think there ought to be more of an issue of working together to find out how you can balance out these particular interests, and the crowd control policy we developed allow for that to happen. So the chief is right in one sense, but I think he's also wrong in another sense that the officers did overreact under circumstances they should not have.
John, what does it mean when they say they're investigating this as if it were a police-involved shooting?
Well, police shootings certainly are the highest level investigations. That requires that the homicide department look into the shooting itself and get the statements and whatever. I don't know that that's any different than any other investigation, but it means that they are viewing it very seriously. It's an officer-involved shooting. In fact, it was an officer-involved shooting because a projectile was shot at someone, and it hurt them. So it is an officer-involved shooting. It should be investigated at the highest level that the police department does. And I think that you may very well have to have an outside group to look at this, look at the police department. It's always not a good idea in a situation like this to have the department investigate itself. Maybe a blue ribbon committee of some kind should be put together to actually go over and look and conduct this investigation itself, as opposed to the internal affairs within a department, which people sometimes don't trust.
All right, John Burris, thank you very much. To talk more about it, let's bring in nationally syndicated radio talk show host Michael Smerconish, who's also an MSNBC contributor. Michael, you've been talking with people all day long. I'm sure many of them seeing the images out of Oakland Tuesday night. What are they saying?
I think people are distressed at what they're seeing in the images, but more than one have said to me that we've learned our lesson, perhaps going back to the Rodney King case, that you shouldn't prejudge these sort of altercations until all the facts are known. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, you've got the mayor being quoted as saying, I can't change what happened, but I'm committed to making sure we have an open dialogue and that we change what happens in the future. Many people are saying, listen, these were peaceful protesters. We saw a potential clash in New York, but the the mayor of New York negotiated with the people who are occupying Wall Street downtown in Manhattan and allowed them to stay, that it never had to get to this point where we're even wondering what happened before the cameras started to roll and what happened after, that this could have been negotiated in a more responsible way. The mayor's saying he can change it in the future, but what about now? These people were peaceful protesters in most cases.
And to the extent that they were peaceful protesters and the police overstepped their bounds, then it should be investigated, as you've already described. But there's a part of me, Tamarin, that says that this is bound to happen when you have thousands of people in closed quarters for extended periods of time with fraying nerves spread out all across the country. I sure hope it doesn't come to that, but it doesn't serve the Occupy movement well if, in fact, these sort of things take this turn. I think they've got to define what their objectives might be and come to a conclusion as to whether they're getting closer to those objectives the longer that they're there. The nation is having a conversation about wealth disparity that we have not had as long as I can remember.
To your point, Robert Gibbs was on the Today Show this morning. Matt Lauer asked him about the responsibility that the Obama administration has in dealing with the income distribution, which has set off these protests. Let's play what he said.
We've had income inequality, and we are seeing now a lot of anxiety and frustration. That's why the president was so forceful in rolling out something that's going to help more and more people get to college.
Michael, when you look at the forecast here, we're ticking up very close, obviously, to the primary and this general election. That frustration is boiling over. It could not have been a worse situation in Oakland. That the person who was injured, it seems the most, was an Iraq War veteran. That frustration and anxiety. What is your concern as we move forward here?
My concern is that there's going to be more of it. And I think that people are frustrated but not quite sure how to channel their energies. And even in the Occupy movement, it doesn't seem like there have been a clearly defined set of goals that are coming out of it. And maybe that would move the ball forward. You know, winter's also coming. I think that some of those nerves, particularly in the Northeast, maybe not in Oakland, are going to become even more frayed. So it's got to be headed towards some kind of resolution.
All right, Michael Smerconish, thanks for joining us and letting us know what folks are telling
Thanks,
you on the
Tamarin.
radio. Thank you.